Hi everybody, welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, Certified Wellbeing Expert, working with educational institutions and companies, helping them support their family wellbeing. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Chris. Hi Chris.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Chris. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So, my name is Chris. I'm 34. I've lived in the Middle East, specifically Dubai, for the last 11 years now.
Oh, wow.
That whole time, I've been teaching in international schools. So, I did 5 years in a big IB international school. I did a few years in an all Emirati boys' school, which was a real big learning experience for me. For the last few years, I was at another British curriculum school. And then April time this year, we had our fourth child and life just got really hectic. So I decided to take a step back from teaching. And then as a result, still wanting to be involved in education. So started a podcast called School Talk. And School
Amazing.
Talk,
Oh, sorry.
go on, I'll go for it.
Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. And the idea behind School Talk was just to give teachers and parents and anyone linked to education just a real insight and a different perspective about what happens in schools. The real reason I came up with it is that I was teaching a science lesson and one of my friends was on a school tour. I didn't know he was coming to see our school. And then he texted me afterwards and was like, what really happens at this school? Because he didn't, obviously the school's going to portray it in its best light and obviously you want them to do that. But he wanted a real insider perspective. And I thought that could be the case with so many different episodes that we've done so far, that parents want to know why schools do this and vice versa. Schools want to know parent perspective on things. So yeah, that's School Talk.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I think that's such an important point to make, actually, isn't it? Because people, really want to know what's really going on, not just what people are showing. So that's really interesting. So you chose this title, Building Bridges, the story of School Talk. I know you've explained a little bit, but can you tell us what this means and why you chose this title for today?
Yeah, so when I first came up with the podcast, the first episode I did completely on my own, which is a bit nerve-wracking, just kind of waffling on.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, that is nerve-wracking, yeah.
About what School Talk is. And then after that, it was all conversations with people I knew in education already. But I knew there'd be a point where it's going to be brand new conversations with people I've never met. And that's where the building bridges comes in. I've met people, parents, teachers, and people from other walks of life that are linked to education. And you build good connections with them. You find out about them, why they're doing what they're doing. And it's just, it's a really good way just to connect to people. And I don't think I'll do this podcast forever, but I do think I will meet someone and we'll just click. And then that will be my next kind of career or where I go next in life. So just a really good way to connect with different people. And here we are today. So
that's really interesting because it sounds like you're quite intuitive then from what you've just said. It's like you know something's going to happen. I mean, you're not sure what.
There's no pressure on what I need to do now. So like the main purpose behind me taking time off work was to spend more time with the kids, which is great. So I can take them to school, pick them up from school. I've never been to so many netball fixtures because I've never had the chance before. Get to spend more time with the baby. So in that regard, life's fantastic. And then this is just kind of, I get to plug it around my life, which I wasn't able to do with teaching because you're the 9 to 5. Whereas this, we can do this when the kids are up getting ready for bed. So it's nice to know that there's no pressure. It doesn't have to achieve anything. If it helps a few people learn a little bit, then great. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And what are you learning as the story of School Talk evolves? Like, what are you learning?
In terms of, so we've done episodes on like play-based learning. We've done it on functional fitness. We've done it about inclusion, all of it. And I think as silly as it sounds, everything in education always comes down to knowing the kids that you teach really, really well. Whether
Yeah.
it be, like I said before, inclusion or getting them to eat well or behavior or special needs, if you don't know that child inside out, then you're going to struggle to get them on board to do whatever you want them to do. And having been in education, and I was kind of really my roles in like leadership was linked to data and assessment. I think in education now we're so hell bent on you have to get this score, you have to achieve this. There's so much assessment in it that we haven't forgotten about student well-being and the child, but it doesn't seem to be the really, really important thing. And that is the big thing that I've kind of not learned because I already knew it, but it's just come to light that everything we do, if you know that kid really, really well, and there's a good relationship between the school and the parents, then everything just kind of falls into place, and it just makes everyone's life, kids' life, teachers' life, parents' life, just so much easier. So that's the big takeaway from what I've
Wow.
done so far.
So it sounds like you're saying if you put a bit of work in the beginning, like a bit of extra work, getting to know the child,
For
then
sure,
it
yeah.
pays off in the long run.
Yeah, so I had a really interesting conversation last week with Dr. Alison Burrows about screen time and when kids get smartphones and things like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things she said is kind of, as a parent, you need to model how you expect your kid to behave. And she was speaking specifically about phones. If you're on your phone at dinner time or when your kid's playing, that's what they're going to see to do. And so they'll be on
Exactly.
their device. And kids on devices kind of limits their, not doesn't limit their growth, but in terms of their concentration, their critical thinking, their ability to interact, all that declines the longer they're on screen. So I think from a parent perspective, you need to really model it. And then also teachers as well. You need to model, be the role model of what you want your kids to or your students to be.
And it's true, isn't it? Children do what they see, not what you tell them to do.
For sure. Like if you think, someone asked me a question who my favorite primary school teacher was. And I've got one guy who he'd probably get fired if he was a teacher now. He used to throw stuff at you and all sorts. But I don't remember any work he gave us. I don't remember anything academic. I just remember that he knew me really, really well.
Wow.
And that stuck with me, nearly 30 years on. So I think you need to remember that anyone linked to education, you really want to get the kids to buy into you and you to buy into them to really help them like thrive.
Definitely. And I think children know, as adults, we know if somebody actually cares. Like you all remember the teacher that cared about you.
Yeah, for sure. And even those little things that, so it's strange because I don't really have any interaction with any school kids, other than my own.
Yeah.
Because all the conversations now I'm having are with teachers or parents or things like that. So, but I completely agree there in terms of kids know if you walk in the morning, and for me, my big buy-in to the boys in my class was football. You'd speak about the football for the weekend. If they didn't love reading, and that's you're in there. Or girls,
Connection.
like I speak about my daughters and be like, oh, my daughter does this. Do you do that? As long as you have that little buy-in with every kid,
Yes.
then yeah, you know them, don't you?
Yeah. I think that's so important. And it's not that difficult to do, is it? It just takes a few minutes each day.
Yeah. And I think that's the difficult thing as well, because kids there's so much to fit into a school day.
Yeah.
Sometimes in education, you feel like, gosh, if I take a lesson a day to just talk to kids, then it's not a waste of time, but you kind of might get behind in other areas of the curriculum, things like that. Like I worked with a lady called Candice Taylor, and she was like the pinnacle of getting to know your kids.
Oh,
Every
really?
week. Yeah, she would just play Uno with them like every day, but she'd play with a different set of kids and just get to know what made them tick. And as a result, anyone would go and speak to her about anything. It was
Yeah.
just fantastic. So she was in our year group, so we would try to emulate what she did just to get to know our kids better. Yeah.
It's amazing because it stops like you said, if you have that relationship with your students, they will come to you when there's a problem. So you can sort it out straight away, rather
Yeah.
than them not trusting you, so the problem escalates, which
Yeah.
would cause problems for the whole
Yeah.
class anyway. So you end up
And then
losing time
parents get
anyway.
involved and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's funny how, yeah, people don't always realize this. So
Mm.
you said you interview lots of teachers and parents on your podcast. So what problems and challenges are the most common ones that they tend to talk about, if they do talk about the problems?
I think if we go from an inclusion perspective,
Yeah.
obviously that's a real difficult one for a school to broach that topic to a parent, that they might need some sort of additional support. So I think
Okay.
in terms of transparency and things like that, from speaking to parents and speaking to like the head of inclusion at Arcadia School that was on the podcast, he was like, it's all about transparency and relationships. If you can
Wow.
sit that parent down and say, look, we've noticed this, we're going to work on X, Y, Z in the next 2 months. If nothing changes, then we might go down this path. Whereas opposed to your kid's got this diagnosis, and then a parent all of a sudden is like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. What's being done? The parent feels bad because they've not noticed and things like that. So I think issues are there about communication. Just the better the communication is from both sides.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about perspective. Schools would love it if a kid has a bad morning, it gets up late, doesn't have breakfast, has an argument with their sibling, and then goes into school. And then the teacher's like, oh, you're late. But if you get an email or a message before just saying, oh, Chris has had a bit of a rough morning, then the same you would in any normal situation. You'd ease off a little bit. Your expectations
Yeah.
might be a little bit different. So, yeah, I think the big problem that comes out with it is communication. I think another big problem that parents and schools face is that in schools, there's so many different middle leaders. So, for example, you might
Right.
be in charge of a netball team or the maths club or something like that. And obviously, everyone wants their little thing to do well, which then pulls from every direction.
For the teacher, you mean?
From a parent perspective,
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
or from a parent perspective, you might get communication, your kid's in a netball fixture today, but then you also get something from the class teacher saying they're in a drama rehearsal and things like that. So
Right.
they're the big problems that obviously everyone thinks their part is important, which obviously it is. So
Yes.
that is a real big balancing act. And I think it all comes to communication and that collaboration from obviously the
And
schools to the parents. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that could be quite overwhelming as well. Yeah, because I know I've spoken to lots of parents, and parents who I've spoken to are quite overwhelmed as well with, the emails, the apps that, you know, the tasks that the children have to do, and they have to keep on top of it, and then they have to
Yes.
support the
We've got
children. I think, yeah, they can get
personally,
quite
I've got 3
overwhelming.
kids in 3 different schools who use
Yeah.
3 different like communication methods.
Okay.
So you need to stay on top of it. And if, again, no, it's not parents' fault. If they miss an email about a dress up day, but then that kid comes into school in normal uniform and everyone else is dressed up, which
Exactly.
again is tricky because if the swimming teacher doesn't say there's a gala, but the class teacher doesn't say there's a dress up day, you need to send those 2 emails. But that's when the communication gets tricky. So yeah, communication, collaboration from both perspective is one kind of thing that families and schools are working on.
And what can the parents do you think? I know you mentioned about communication,
Mm.
but what can they do to be on top of this? Or is it just a case of just organization?
It is organization. I think schools do try and send out month-long calendars to give you like a week ahead about the
Okay.
important things that are happening the next week. And that just kind of makes sure you don't miss anything. Schools are putting more emphasis on kids as well, sharing calendars and big events with them so they understand what they're responsible for as well.
Yeah,
Um, I think schools, it's maybe different from school to school, try
sure.
and put more emphasis on a kid and less emphasis on a nanny. I've had countless conversations where my nanny forgot this. And I'm like, but you're 11. Surely
Really? Wow.
that's a little bit of your responsibility as well. So yeah, it's just trying to make, obviously as the kids get older, just trying to make them a little bit more responsible.
I guess it's like finding the balance as well, isn't it? Because like you said, the children need to be responsible,
Yeah,
but also you have on the other side, because I work with lots of students who are just under so much pressure, and it could be the pressure they're putting on themselves, or they have really high anxiety, really
yeah,
stressed as they get older, with exams and things. But sometimes even younger students
yeah.
are quite stressed out with tests and things.
So
Like,
that's where the teacher's balancing act comes in. You need to give them
yeah,
that level of responsibility, but also if they do forget something and get super frustrated or anxious about it, then be like, you know what, it's only a phone call away. We can sort it. It's okay. So yeah, it really is that balancing act. And again, for me, it always comes back to that communication and that
mm,
good relationship between school and home.
yeah.
So
I
that I think
think,
that is
yeah.
really important.
No, I think you're right, and I think most problems actually most things come down to communication and building that relationship, because once
Yeah,
like if you spend the time in the beginning building the relationship with the students,
yeah,
communicating with them, like we said before, you're going to solve the problems much more
yeah,
easily and smoothly, rather than it's just
yeah.
when things get left, isn't it? Because then things can get worse. Like even if a child is suffering from anxiety, if they can talk about it,
Mm.
sometimes that solves the problem straight away.
Yeah. I think as
Wow.
well, kind of like you said, getting to know the kids, getting to know the parents is a really important one. That gets less and
Okay.
less as the kids get older in schools. And parent I spoke to says kind of from year 6 and definitely from secondary upwards, you just drop the kids off and pick them up. You don't go in, you don't speak to the teacher. So that relationship compared to your year 2 kid, where you see that teacher every single day, and you just even that 2-minute chat before and after school across
Mm,
the space of 3 terms is a really strong relationship.
yeah.
Whereas in a year 6 teacher, parents could walk past, and unless they look really like their kid, you have no idea who they even are, which again is quite sad because for me, like I really like getting to know parents and just building that relationship because there's little kids things that kids do, and you're like the parent does the same thing. You're like, oh, it all makes sense now.
And
So
it's
yeah,
just, yeah, building relationships. Well, you get to know things that maybe you wouldn't know before, maybe
yeah,
reasons why the child is acting a certain way. So you can
yeah,
maybe have empathy and things like that. I think yeah, it's really important.
yeah.
And going back to your podcast, because I know your podcast is really educational and it helps
Mm.
lots of students, teachers, parents. So what is the primary objective of your podcast then, would you say?
Primary objective of the podcast is say just to give perspective on different things. So I know that there'll be lots of topics that will come up and be like play-based learning. My kids are in year 8 and year 9. That doesn't impact them now. But a family that's just about to go into year 1, like, oh my gosh, because you hear conversations of teachers, all they do is play. I want more than that. But then that gives them a real insight into what they do, how they do it, and why it's effective for the kids. I've got an episode coming up about planning for universities.
Oh, have
So
you? Oh, so you go much older as well. Yeah.
yeah, so like how to apply for different universities, and then following on from that, I've got a finance guy coming on to talk about budgeting for university. The little
Amazing.
things that if you're a resident in Dubai, you're probably going to have to pay international fees if you go back to the UK. Things like that. Do parents have you factored that in now? And yeah, just to give, I know not every episode will attract everybody. But that's the whole part. If one a month gives some sort of traction to you and teaches you something and something like that, that's the real perspective there. It's just to share, to help people learn.
Yeah, share knowledge, important knowledge. I
Yeah.
think, I think that's really important. And how do you choose your guests on your podcast?
So the first few, it was friends calling in favors, things like that. And then it's kind of really grown organically from there. I will post on my Instagram just little reels of the best clips from that thingy. So And then from there, people will comment or recommend me, or they'll send it to someone else. Then I'll either get in contact with them or they'll get in contact with me. And some people I've said no to because they've just kind of wanted to advertise their business,
Yeah.
it was tenuous links to education, but I was like, I don't need it to be about this because I want
Mm,
it to keep it as authentic as possible.
sure.
So the guests have been really organic. You connect with people, and you can kind of tell by what they post on who they follow, and just a quick conversation whether
Yeah.
they're the right person. Because the end, I've done all of them so far in person. So
Okay.
it's still a bit awkward if you don't gel with someone. You're speaking to them for 50 minutes, and some of the times it's been in my house. So you can
Oh,
come
wow.
round, a complete stranger comes to my house, you don't get on well, and it's a little bit. So I think that is really important, that you have to have that somewhat relationship before you even meet them. Um, but yeah, lucky to say, touch wood, all the guests have been great so far. Everything's been like really organic. So long may
And I
that
think
continue.
it's confidence building for you as well, yeah?
For sure, yeah. Um, it's strange. Like my wife would say that I'm the most unsociable person ever. So if you go to like a baby sensory class, like, oh, did you speak to anyone? And I'm like, no. But when it comes to this, it's just really cool just seeing what people do. So I had an etiquette
Mm,
coach, a conversation with her the other week, and I thought, just is there a market for that? But she said there's, in terms of like Asia, things like that, is really, really big on etiquette and manners and things like that. So that's where a business thrives. And
yeah.
I just didn't think there was even a market for that. But
Yeah.
she does ASAs in schools, she does etiquette classes on the weekends and stuff. So
Amazing.
yeah, there's just so many different walks of life that
It,
still
it,
link to education and ultimately help bring kids up.
exactly. So it's like you're spreading educational awareness about different topics, but also you're learning yourself in the process. So it's a win-win, isn't it? It's actually a
Yeah,
win-win.
definitely, yeah. And I learned so much, and even in terms of the whole editing and social media side of it, you post probably a couple of times a week. I've done all my own editing so far, and you learn
Brilliant.
all that side of it to see some of the episodes that I thought would be really, really popular haven't been, and the ones that I
Mm,
thought weren't very good have been really popular. So just trying to think, wow, that what I personally thought was boring, you need to think, wait, there's so many other people out there who don't have exactly the same views or
yes.
needs as I do. So
Mm,
again, I kind of got to take my own interest out of it, and
yeah.
I've just said yes to everyone really, other than those business trying to promote itself.
Yeah,
I think every conversation will be a good conversation, and you
exactly.
learn. If I don't learn something, people around me will learn something. So hopefully, just
Somebody's
try and
learning.
share one thing, and it's a good episode for me.
Exactly. Somebody's learning something. And
Yeah,
you never know, episodes you've done maybe before in the past that maybe didn't get as much traction as other ones might in a 6 months later or a year later, somebody's seen that episode,
yeah.
which
So
is
that's
completely forgotten
one
about.
thing I didn't. Yeah, that's one thing I didn't think about is that because they're not linked to any period of time, then people
Yes.
do go back and listen to them.
Yes.
So I listen to a lot of like golf and football podcasts, but that's all very topical. I
Okay.
won't go back 6 months and listen to a podcast about a game then. That's
Yeah.
gone. That's done.
It's outdated.
Whereas there's two episodes, one about the dangers of vaping in schools and one about inclusion. Every week you get more and more people go back and listen just to those two specifically. So there's no timestamp on them. It's just interesting information that those experts that I've interviewed have said and is still resonating with people now. And I think what must happen, they
Mm.
listen to it and share it with someone, then they listen to it, which is really, really interesting to kind of get
Exactly.
and have shared.
And it could be something that they're going through at the moment, but they weren't going through it before, so they maybe weren't as interested, but now they are.
Yeah,
So you never
yeah.
know when, yeah, it's going to be relevant for them.
Yeah, because we were speaking earlier, and my wife says I don't really go back and look through old episodes of podcasts unless it's someone really interesting. But
Yeah.
like you said, with kids, you go through different stages. So
Yes.
the play-based learning might not be important now, or the inclusion thing might not be important now. But oh wait, all of a sudden, I might have an email from an inclusion teacher. What does that mean? Then you can go back and get some context about it. So
Exactly. So it's all relevant at one
yeah,
time. So no, it is good. And we're running out of time. Time flies.
yeah.
So just going back to, you did mention briefly a little bit about well-being.
Hmm.
Can you tell us a bit more about the situation with well-being and what you're learning with from your guests on your podcast in
Yes,
education?
the well-being part of it is that I think the big thing that I've learned is that technology, as fantastic as it is, we're speaking today via technology. Everyone watching, listening is obviously through technology, but then I think that's having a real impact on well-being at the same time. I think there
Mm,
needs to be a real balance from homes and schools on getting kids to actually just go out and talk to each other and interact with each other.
yeah.
And I think the less screen time they have and device time, the stronger that well-being is. Because we did an episode with the pastoral leaders from Fair Green School,
Okay.
and they were saying, like, they give the example of, if when they were in school they had a fight, that was done, no one spoke about it that night, the next day they go into school.
Sure.
Whereas if there's an argument or something now, all night people can talk about it, they can message you directly and ask you about it, they can talk to your friends behind your back without you realizing, and the next day it's still going on. And
Mm,
then the school have no control over that either, because that's all happened outside of school. So educating kids on how you want to be treated using devices is all going to have
brilliant.
a really strong impact on well-being. And I think that's a whole, anyone linked to a child needs to kind of try and support that. Is
Mm,
probably the big takeaway that I've learned from well-being.
brilliant. So yeah, healthy boundaries then. Having healthy
Yeah, for
boundaries
sure.
with social
Yeah.
media. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done an episode specifically on social media, but again, that's something that I've read and people have told me that should be delayed for as long as possible to 14, even 16, because it's difficult. I
Yeah.
think,
It's very hard though, isn't it? Because I mean, speak to parents quite often, and they find it very hard to stop their children using social media. Like, how do you actually stop them?
yeah. So there's the person I interviewed last week, Dr. Alison Burrows. She started a movement called Screenwise Child UAE,
Oh,
and she
okay.
said collectively, if one family doesn't give their kid a phone, that's not going to make an impact. But if groups of people within schools choose not to give their kids smartphones straight away, then it's kind of delaying all of that, which is really, really good.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
every single school, well, not every single school, but a large majority of schools have got a group, a Screenwise group for their school. So it's kind of
Brilliant.
taken that collective action, which is really good, because if you go into secondary school next year and you're the only one without an iPhone, you miss out on everything.
Exactly.
Whereas
Well, yeah.
collectively, 10 kids in your class don't have an iPhone, then you're like, oh, cool, it's fine. I can call you. I can use my mum's phone to call you. We can message on our iPads. You don't
Yeah.
have to have that smartphone or that social media. So
That's
yeah, that's a big
brilliant.
thing as well.
But I did read somewhere before we go. I did read somewhere that there is a country that's banned phones from schools, and I can't remember which country
Oh,
it
wow.
was. I read that the other day.
Yeah. So just quick, like, my daughter's going to Jess Ranch's secondary next year,
Yeah.
and they're introducing Yonder pouches. So at the start of the
Okay.
day, they put their phone in this pouch and the school lock it, and you can't have
Brilliant.
access to your phone the whole day, which good. So you take away the kind of the distraction from it, messaging throughout the day. And at the end of the day, they unlock the pouch, then you can have your phone back again.
Oh,
So
that's
it does
brilliant.
take the distractions out completely throughout the day, which I think kind of links to what you're saying there about banning phones completely.
Hmm.
Is a
But
difficult thing to do, but
yeah,
this is a step in the direction.
I think so. But then on the other side, some schools you have to use your phone to complete the work in the class, which I don't understand. I think, no way, I would hate that. But maybe because my age, I don't know. But so
Well, I
there's no
think
getting away.
just before we finish, I've read
Yeah,
something
sure.
earlier. Imagine when you were in school, your teacher said to you, you can bring in your walkie-talkie, you can bring in your TV, and you can bring in your like CD player and have it on your desk all the time.
Exactly.
That's pretty much what we're saying to kids now. You can have access to all of that and it's in your pocket and if you need to, just hide under the table and text your mate. So again, it will take a real collective effort for all of that, but that's just what you do when you buy into education, really, I say.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know, it just surprises me that children are even allowed phones in the class. Like, I just don't understand it at all, because of course that's not going to help. But no, we could talk about this for a long time, and I think it's such an important discussion. But no, I just want to say thank you so much, Chris, for coming along and sharing all of your insights from your amazing podcast. Is there anything else? No, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say about your podcast and everything?
If you want to listen to any of the episodes on the podcast, it's available on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Just search for School Talk UAE, and then on my Instagram page, School Talk UAE, you get lots of snippets and kind of upcoming episode information. It's all shared on there. So.
Amazing. And this can benefit parents, students, teachers, anyone related to education.
Anyone linked to education, whether you're thinking about going into education, in terms of, if I've done an episode about how to select a school.
So brilliant.
Your kid's just about to start in education here in Dubai, that episode might help you as well. So
amazing. And if you could put all of those links on the post, and then people can just click on it, it'll be easier.
Now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everybody else, and see you next week.
Thank you.